Are Ashwin left a ball to win a World Cup match? And not in a game, but the most watched in cricket, and really most of all of sport in that year. What he did not require cricket skill or stunning athleticism. It could have been done by anyone in a park or gully match who was smart and had the courage to do something a little bit weird. Basically, to do this, you needed to be a cricket nerd in excelsis. Because this is thinking cricket, but it also has courage. If you do this and you get it wrong, you look like you're trying to be too smart. Like you didn't have the courage to just stand there and do the right thing and hit the winning runs. But Ashwin saw the moment differently. Many players do, but they stay in line, keep their head down, and they follow the game as it was supposed to be played. Ashwin wouldn't stay in line enough to bowl on one side of the wicket and stay there. In a test, he suddenly decided to come around the wicket, but after the ball was bowled, he would cross back to over the wicket in front of the umpire. That would have occurred to players before him, especially in the DRS era where running in front of the umpires was less finishing. But he took it to the next level. And he not only did it in a test, when the umpire tried to tell him he was doing something wrong, he knew the playing conditions and the laws, and he explained very calmly to the umpire exactly why he was doing what he was doing and why it wasn't an issue for the danger area on the pitch. He was engineering a new format of bowling right in front of our eyes. There is thinking different, and then there is being different. Ashwin was smart enough to be the first one, and courageous enough to do the second. In 2009, I was in a swimming pool in a resort in Dambulla on holiday. Quite randomly, there was also 3 cricket teams staying there who were playing a tri-series. The hosts Sri Lanka and New Zealand and India. My cricket media journey was quite early on, so I don't think any of the players knew who I was, which meant that I could kind of hang around and get a feel for both teams without looking like someone trying to get a scoop or info. One day I went down to one of the back pools to do some swimming. A few lengths in, I realized that someone else was also doing a few laps. After a while, I realized that they were trying to keep up with me. So I went faster, and this person went with me. And then I really went for it, and again, they kept trying to catch me. This was not like an Olympic pool. It was basically one usually for kids, away from the snazzy infinity ones that look really good for Instagram. It wasn't the kind of pool where you would normally race someone. But this dude just wouldn't stop. He wasn't a really strong swimmer. His technique was a bit all over the place. But no matter how hard I pushed, he was trying to catch and beat me. Eventually I stopped, and so did he. And while we both frantically tried to catch our breaths, I looked over and this random dude was Ashwin. Yes, he was a nerd, an intellectual cricket scientist, but he also had that dog in him. This wasn't a professor who had theories stroking his beard. This was a guy out there doing field work. Remember when Australia bombed him in India's last tour? His back was so stiff, he looked like he was your grandfather getting off a 12-hour bus trip. And yet, he fought through. Cricket might have come to him like a puzzle to solve, but he also had the fight to take the hits and get angry himself. The moment when these two sides really came together the most was Mancats. He helped change the global perception on these, and he did it with critical thinking and the dog in him. Like many of us, he couldn't understand why a batter could get an advantage here and yet not be punished. It hurt his brain that there had been an artificial spirit put into what was a simple equation. You walk out of your crease, you can be run out. But he also had that dog in him to say, nah, fuck it. I'm willing to put my reputation on the line to stand by my belief. I want to win this game, and this person is out of the crease. Ashwin did not bowl off spin enough. I know that sounds crazy, but too often he would be so quick to change what he was doing that he forgot that he was the best pure off spinner in the world, maybe ever. His brain moved so quick that after 2 or 3 balls, he would be trying in spin, carom balls, a new angle, quicker balls, whatever he needed to do. It was like he got bored of just being great at off spin. Never has a bowler of this level deconstructed their own main skill as much as he did. Like when he turned up at the Asia Cup to bowl in long sleeves and just try Sunil Narayan's action. And what about the time he decided in the IPL that it was basically going to be a leg spinner for a long period of time? Most players with an advantage like he had would just milk it until the wickets stopped coming. He would change a few overs into a test spell because he hadn't looked like getting a wicket for a couple of balls. His processing speed was almost too quick. It wasn't allowing him to come in with just his normal fast turning and bouncing off spin delivery that probably would have got him a wicket anyway. And some of this came from the fact that when he started cricket, he was a batter because he had that part-timer's brand. Like Sobers or Tendulkar, he was always just trying things that would annoy the batters because he understood them. But he did that with Bisham Beattie's fingers. So while great old spinners would show patience, he was already onto his 7th theory in like his 2nd spell. He was athletically gifted in terms of spin bowling, but not in many other ways. He didn't have fast twitch muscle fibers or a stereotypically athletic body. But like Andrea Pirlo or Nikola Jokic, his brain was athletic, able to recalibrate on the fly with new information, understanding in a second what the opposition were trying to do. Most spinners have that, but his was in a near constant 6th gear. But I don't want to undervalue his incredible athleticism, because he was clearly a skill-based athlete, but he had incredible hands that could catch up with his brain. He could spin the ball violently at pace and change the axis of the ball on a whim, spin it in both directions, master other styles like a great mimic. None of that would have been possible without his hands. And of course, when we talk about him as a great bowler, he's always going to be linked to the spinning wickets of the Indian era that he played in, where teams turned up to wickets that basically already had Ashwin's face tattooed onto them with dust. Like Jimmy Anderson, he will be seen as a conditions bully. But people forget that he could have been a lot better everywhere else had his career not overlapped with a great all-rounder named Ravi Jadeja. And even if he was only great on spinning pitches, a lot of players have played on them before. They do not have his numbers. And you add to that he was the best bowler to left-handers that we have ever seen. At his peak, standing on the goofy side of the bat to him was a death sentence. And what is his legacy as a spinner? Well, he has a pretty good case for being the 3rd best of all time. Not bad for a man who seemed bored with his main skill. Indian cricket was not made great by this era. This nation has been building to something massive for a very long time. The current team's success in tests, the recent win in the World Cup, stands on the shoulders of legends. But this was an incredible team. One that missed out on some silverware, but in the bilaterals is one of the greatest we have ever seen. So many genius players overlapping in one era. And more interestingly, many of them coming through at a similar age. But this era was built on the back of 3 cores. Rohit with Virat, the seam bowlers, and then the Ashwin-Jadeja partnership. All of it needed to exist to make this side what it was. But Ashwin and Jadeja elevated it to levels that most teams could never touch. Finding a good crop of seamers and some top order players is fine. Lots of sides have done that before. But India had a 500 wicket taker who could also make hundreds. And then they had a great second spinner, who would be most teams' first spinner, who could also bat in the top order. This team might not have been as good at their peak as the great Australian and West Indian sides, but they had a flexibility that we have simply never seen before. And Ashwin was the heart of that. He was a nuclear weapon at home, and yet could be a 12th man away. We have never had a player at this level be so single use, and yet be versatile enough to bat at number 6 in this team for quite a few matches as well. India would have been an incredible side without him, but he was the difference when they wanted to reach greatness. He was a walking Player of the Series award. Almost every series you knew there was going to be 3 unplayable spells, maybe a couple of plucky 30-year-olds, and a larger score as well. In a team of great players, he could reach the same level as any of them, but he seemed to add more because of the way it all came together. He referred to being one of the last OGs, an aging man in a team that has a few older players around. But he's also one of the few OGs of Indian cricket. They have Sunil Gavaskar, Rahul Dravid, Kapil Dev, Sachin Tendulkar, Ravi Jadeja, and Jasprit Bumrah. He is definitely on that level. And not just as a great spinner, but as someone with a tactical brain who can also bat as well. Ashwin was not a great all-rounder in the way that Jadeja and Dev are. He was his own version, a one of one. My friend Subhash Jayaraman was a fan who decided to interview interesting people in cricket. Because he was not a media person, he asked questions that fans wanted to know. But not like normal cricket fans, Uber fans. In fact, not even just Uber fans, but online cricket nerds. And I am one of them. And if you're here at the moment, you're probably one of them as well. And I think there was an entire generation of us who watched cricket really closely because of the extra cameras and the amount of matches we could actually see. And we were also brought up on Cricinfo in the ball-by-ball era. And then we found each other through blogs and social media. Subhash interviewed a lot of people in cricket, and one of them was Ashwin. They bonded early on, and the interview was really a great listen as they pushed each other to think about the game differently. It was that chat that led to an Ashwin quote that may define who he is. He said, "I basically think that 6 well-constructed bad balls could be the way forward in T20 cricket." If that seems normal now or just a little bit weird, it was revolutionary at the time. Even now, it still feels a little bit counterintuitive. Why would a bad ball be better than a good one? But what Ashwin was talking about was how, as a spinner specifically, beating someone in the flight with a perfectly pitched ball doesn't mean anything if they smash you for a 6 anyway. What he really wanted to do was find a way not to be hit for a 6 in the first place. He was probably inspired by Sunil Narayan at the time. His best ball was not his off spinner drifting away and turning back, or even his Karen ball spitting in the other direction. No, for Narayan, it was a back of a length ball on leg stump that hit the thigh pad and rarely went for more than a single. Ashwin would also say, probably the best ball is not anymore the best ball now. Probably a short, wide, and shit ball could be the best ball from now on. This was in 2016, he said this. A T20 generation on, and most spinners now bowl shorter. So much so that we are seeing new shots played by batters to combat this Rashid, Narayan, and Chakravarti length. Ashwin is not the T20 bowler that any of them are, but he saw this trend way before anyone else. Why? Because Ashwin is like Subhash. He is a cricket nerd, but also a terminally online one. He is another child of Cricinfo that then found the social media world and jumped in there. I remember a young blogger with less than 200 followers telling me once that Ashwin had contacted him about a piece. And my first thought was, how did Ashwin even find this guy? But in truth, he is one of us, the sorts of people who will be watching this video right now. He's not just a cricket fan, he's not just a cricket nerd, but a product of an entire new online world of cricket, where a Twitter thread can go viral and we all learn a little bit. But Ashwin's supercomputer brain will use that information to be better on the field. When a YouTube video breaks down a batter, he is there taking mental notes. He is reading articles, listening to the podcast, and following new trends. And the difference between him and us, of course, is he takes all of this out on the field. He turns wacky online theories into test wickets. He is doing on the field what most of us tried to do when we played international cricket captain. He was rewriting cricket's code right in front of our eyes from the same central hub of information that we all had. We were chatting shit about the game we love. He was out there finding an edge, a bump, something that could win him another match. I reckon my first proper conversation about an intentional retired out for T20 cricket probably comes around 2012. From that point onwards, I had heaps of them in real life, Twitter, through WhatsApp with friends. I've had this conversation with Subhash with a rum or a bourbon in front of us in random pubs probably all around the world. And it was always the same. What positions in the game would be better for a batter to simply just walk off the field? How would a retired out actually work? And who would ever be brave enough to do it? And then one day in an IPL game, we see Ashwin just retire himself out. Decide that the team would be better off with him not batting at that moment and just leaving. He was not the first to try this. People had done it in women's and associate cricket. But Ashwin did it in the IPL. And he then took to the airwaves to explain why this happened. Ashwin found an online theoretical chat thread and he turned it into parts of his brand. He was not just a cricket nerd, but he was the king of online cricket nerds, turning Reddit threads into reality. He left balls to win, ran out cheating batters, constructed bad deliveries, and never stopped fiddling with his own greatness. The most important moment in Ashwin's career was usually after 3 dot balls were defended from the middle of the bat. Great spinners are patient. They are ambush predators, waiting for the gazelle to forget just for a millisecond that the lion might be there and then jump out to collect their prize. Fast bowlers are pursuit predators. They are actively chasing down their victims. Ashwin was a combination of both, which is called ballistic interception hunting. All predators basically consider the cost and benefits of their hunting. How much energy will they have to use? Should they go after one big target or lots of little ones? The ballistic interceptor predator observes and predicts a prey's motion before launching their attack. That was Ashwin. He didn't have the patience of an ambusher, and he couldn't outrun in a pursuit. So he looked at the tools he had available and he created his own method. And after those 3 defensive shots, he could have just waited. He could have tried the dream off-spinner's delivery. Instead, he would be desperate to get the ball back, hoisting up his sleeves impatiently because he already had a plan of how he would be ballistically intercepting his next wicket. Maybe it was from a carom ball, or the in-to-in spin, or around the wicket. He was not waiting for a mistake. He had seen enough in those 3 blocks to know what card he had to play next. He was a nerd, engineer, artist, and hunter, all rolled into one. Like he'd been using the smartest brains in cricket as his own personal hive mind. And now that was going to come out in a new, perfect plan that would intercept the batter's wicket. A dance he repeated more than 500 times. Our Ashwin was not one of us. He was the best of all of us. It took God and the demon to build international cricket, but don't tell Johnny Best. 1882, Australia had played 1 test in England against the god W.G. Grace, and they sucked. So they were playing him again, and it was a tough wicket. But England was in front, so Australia was desperate for a 3rd innings lead. At number 8 was young all-rounder Sammy Jones. After a routine single, he walks down to do some gardening on the pitch. Grace whips off the bails and appeals. The ball wasn't dead, Jones was run out. The Australians were furious. In fact, some of the English players were also furious. But what Grace said went, and the umpires had already given it. Next in was Fred Spofford. He was known as the demon fast bowler. He was furious, and he let England know exactly what was coming next, which was maiden. There's 12 maidens. I can't count them all. England only needed 85 to win. W.G. Grace made 32. England only 77. That was the test where the Ashes began. Buy my book, Overthrowing Cricket's Empire, on Amazon today.